Hello there, and welcome to the 5 rules of Mordhau. If you've arrived at this video, perhaps you're looking to become the destroyer of men. Or perhaps you're just a struggling noob who doesn't want to die every time he gets into a fight. Or maybe you're just looking to improve your KD. Whatever your desires are, this guide will aim to tell you a lot of the things that the tutorial doesn't tell you, and that other guides don't seem to tell you either, as they just reiterate the tutorial seemingly. But who the hell am I to tell you how to play Mordhau? What do I know? Well, I've come from hundreds of hours of chivalry, which translates well to give me the upper hand in Mordhau, allowing me to do pretty well for myself most of the time. I'm certainly not claiming to be the best player in the world, but I definitely think I can teach you a thing or two. So if you're looking to become the destroyer of men, listen up. So the first thing to realize with Mordhau is that there is no one single way of combat. There are 3 main situations. First off, the one-on-one situation, or duel. Obviously you'll find this in duel servers, but it'll happen in team games as well, where you'll come across someone and fight them one-on-one. Although it can still kind of happen even when there's other people around. This is where the true test of skill is, and you'll need to use all the tools in your arsenal to defeat your opponents. And then there are outnumbered situations, which are of course pretty common in Mordhau. They may be the result of your own bad positioning, all your teammates dying, or just bad luck. Either way, you can't fight the same way as you do in a one-on-one. You need to play much more defensively and make good use of ripostes, but we'll go into this a bit more later on. But understand, your game plan needs to change. And then there's crowd situations, where you're fighting alongside a bunch of your allies, fighting a bunch of enemies. This is where you'll need to use good footwork to get in and out and land some attacks, while simultaneously avoiding enemy attacks because there could be a bunch coming at you at once, and also switching to mostly using stabs and overhead attacks, because swinging your weapon from left to right horizontally gives you a good chance of clonking teammates in the face, like so. Understanding your situation and what to do in it is a big part of being any good at Mordhau. So make sure you remember this when you charge into battle, so you can best decide what kind of skill set you need to use. Once you've done it enough, it'll become habitual and you won't even think about it. Now, let's get into the rules. Rule number 1. Be unpredictable. So the Mordhau combat system is definitely one with a steep learning curve. It takes many hours of practice to turn things into habits, but some things can only be learned and discovered by you from playing the game. No video will be able to teach you certain aspects of Mordhau combat. But one thing that is definitely certain is that being unpredictable in combat gives you major advantages. If you're very predictable and easy to read, your enemy can certainly use that against you. All we need to really do is make habits of using all the different tools that the game gives us. So let's get into looking at how we can be unpredictable. Now a couple of things to understand. First of all, it's range, using the full length of your weapon's range. It's very important and you need to learn to get used to it with your preferred weapon. If you're new, I'd recommend picking one weapon that you like and just sticking with it for a long time, so you can start to develop some muscle memory of how far you need to be to land your attacks. This can be a huge advantage. And then we have just the basic movement of how fights work. Most people will move in and out to each other, in and out, in and out, in and out, and will attempt to damage each other when they're in range. As you can see here, we're currently in, now we're backing off, we're out. This is my glamorous assistant Soul, who will be helping me throughout this video, by the way. Now we're in, out, back in, out, back in, a little bit out, back in, and Soul is going to bed. So you understand, fights are just people moving towards each other and away from each other repeatedly, and when they're close, they're trying to find ways to land attacks on each other, whether that be through offensive or defensive strategies. So, as you probably know, if you run up to somebody and straight up attack them, they're going to parry it 9 times out of 10. The true objective of the game is to draw out these parries too early or too late. This can be achieved through various skills that the game offers you, most of which you'll be taught about in the tutorial. Feints, morphs, drags, excels, sometimes even jumping can draw out the parry. So if you're one of those people who are new to the game and you're just pretty much attacking and getting parried all the time and wondering why you're never landing any hits, well that's why. It's because you are predictable. Everybody can block these simple straight attacks. It's super easy, even my nan could do it. So we got to find ways to be a little bit unpredictable. We could use a feint on our approach to trick our enemy into parrying too early. We could also use a morph, which will achieve pretty much the same thing. Also good at preventing those chambers. So those two are the basics really. If you want to get a little more advanced, you could try drag. That's where you look away so that your weapon lands a lot later and the parry becomes too early. We could try and bait out an enemy attack and then backstep out the way, creating an opening for our own attack. This is one I use a lot. Or if you have the longer weapon, you can simply outrange your opponent pretty easily, provided you know your distances. So try it out. When you first run up to an enemy, try a simple feint or a morph. Draw out those early parries so you can land attacks. They're not going to work every time, and more experienced players will be wise to it, so you'll have to use a mixture of all the different skills you have available. And this is it. This is all really Mordhau combat is. It's learning to use all these different skills and making them habits so you do them automatically without thinking about them, so they're smooth and fluent. So remember, if you run up to somebody who has seen you coming, just mashing the left mouse button probably isn't going to land. We need to use some kind of skill to create openings and then take advantage of them. So get to know how to land an initial attack, and then you can get a feel for combos. Here I'm going to use a drag straight into a feint, which is a combo that works for me a lot of the time with the goddamn horrible war axe. Or you could charge in. I'm going to do that drag, but then I'm going to back off. I don't have to combo, I have the choice. Your situation will usually dictate what you should do. So here's a few examples. I'm going up the hill here. I'm going to see one of my allies having a fight. Now I'm going to run straight past this first guy so he doesn't think I'm going after him, and they're going to turn around and he's not even looking at me. Free hit right there. Going to try and finish him off with a feint, but his friend comes along and cracks me. Going to get a riposte. It's going to wipe him out and hit the other one. Another feint. Going to take him down. Another guy charging in. Going to backstep, land my attack combo straight into a feint and put this fella in the bin. A lot going on very quickly there. Let's do the same thing with some duels. A great way to learn and get better are duel servers. I'm going to try to outrange him there, backstep, but it failed. I was too close. Same thing again, worked that time though, landed a hit. Going to feint, boom, there's that combo again. Backstep, hit, combo to a feint, works for me. Not every time, but a lot of the time. Going to go again, another duel. I'm going to backstep to start with. There's a free hit. Going to try and combo to a feint, but he blocks it this time. Going to sneak in a quick hit there. We're both playing very aggressively. He gets a chamber on me. I'm going to sneak in a slightly excelled riposte, and that is going to be enough to put him down. Let's get one more going. So you see we're both out of range, out. And then we're coming in. I'm going to attack, but I'm going to parry. He's going to miss though. I'm going to sneak and excel in there. I'm going to try a little bit of a feint and a little bit of a drag. Doesn't work though. I'm going to catch two attacks. He's going to get me on the edge of his range. I'm in a bad way now, so I've got to be careful. Going to take the tiniest backstep, just about staying out of his range. A little bit more luck than judgment, but that is also part of Mordhau. So hopefully this illustrates the point I keep reiterating. Be unpredictable and use all these different skills. All the things the tutorial teaches you, and some of the things that it doesn't, like the backstep. So you can keep your opponents guessing, draw out those parries and get those easy hits. And make sure you do learn to use a mixture of them, otherwise you become predictable. If you only ever use drags, for example, like some people do, it makes you a predictable player in its own way. But of course, do be aware of defense sometimes as well. If you're charging up to someone about to launch your attack, be aware if they've launched their attack first, because you may need to pull back and parry, maybe even into a cheeky riposte. And of course, look out for ripostes yourself. If you get parried, there's a good chance a riposte may be coming. You could also try to enter and look for chambers, but to be honest, these are a little bit too high risk for my taste and are best saved for specific situations. So that is our first and probably the main rule of Mordhau, is to be unpredictable. Even if you don't watch the rest of this video, take that point away, because honestly it's the most important thing about the game. Be unpredictable, not only in your attacks but in your movement and the things you do. You can catch people out very easily. If you've seen my deceptive tricks and tactics video on Mordhau, you'll probably know what the hell I'm talking about. So with every one-on-one engagement, try to stay unpredictable. In group situations, you need to do the same thing, but it won't quite be in the same way, which brings us nicely to the second rule of Mordhau. Rule number 2. Defend and riposte. So this rule is all about being outnumbered, as it is a very common situation in Mordhau. If you want to have any hope of getting a decent KD, you've got to learn to deal with the outnumbered situations. Now the key thing you want to try and do when you're facing 2 or more enemies is defend and riposte, as the rule says. That means you wait for an enemy to attack you, you parry it, and then you riposte. Why, I hear you cry? Because a riposte attack is uninterruptible, which means that even if you take a hit, you'll still be able to follow through with your attack, which is not the case if you do just a regular attack. So you need to pretty much not launch attacks of your own unless there's a gap, wait for enemy attacks to come in, and then parry it and riposte. So as an example here, I'm going to end up in a 3-on-1 situation. I'm going to recognize this and change the way I'm playing. Going to get a parry there into a riposte. Going to get hit. Going to keep moving back. Going to use my dodge and sneak in an attack there. Gets blocked though. And another parry and a riposte. Get a kill there. Getting a bit stabbed up as you might do. Just about survived though. Going to back off. Going to wait for an attack. Parry and riposte. Get a hit in. Going to follow up with a feint on this guy. Would have died there, but that barn pole saved me. So a bit of luck there. Again, going to wait for the attack, parry and riposte, sneak one in there, and then my teammates are going to finish that guy off. So all about parrying and ripostes in those outnumbered situations. If I tried to attack those three there, I would have been quickly binned off. So I had to be patient, defend, and then look for those ripostes where available. And the key here again is that ripostes are uninterruptible. If you're being stabbed at by 2 or 3 people, your normal attacks are never going to get through because they'll more than likely get interrupted. The uninterruptibleness of ripostes is the key to outnumbered situations. And even if you can't kill all the people attacking you, you can at least take 1 or 2 with you maybe, or at least damage them for your teammates to finish off. So remember, when you get in these outnumbered situations, switch your thinking to defend and riposte. But there is one more important ingredient to include in the defend and riposte, and that is target switching. Again, if you've seen my deceptive tactics and tricks video, you'll know all about it. Quite simply, you want to parry the attack of one enemy and riposte into a different enemy. Why? Because this is, you've guessed it, unpredictable, which comes back to our first rule. The person who launched the attack may be expecting a riposte and will probably be ready for it. But the person who didn't attack may be trying to sneak in an attack, and your riposte will catch them out, especially as riposte strikes move faster than regular strikes. Now, let me tell you the story of the lone Zerk and the greedy clowns. One day, Zerk wandered out into his backyard to discover clowns everywhere. He proceeded to eliminate these clowns, some of whom just decided to take their own lives by running into Zerk's axe. But Zerk didn't anticipate how many clowns were there. Soon he was swarmed, and things were looking pretty bleak. But Zerk remembered his defend and riposte training, and used it to good effect, felling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these greedy clowns. And along came a 6th greedy clown, who wanted it so badly he wiped out a 7th greedy clown before eating Zerk's axe himself. And the 8th clown didn't even see it coming. So what's the moral of the story here? Don't be a greedy fucking clown. How the hell was I able to kill 8 people in the space of about 30 seconds? Was it because I'm a frickin' champ? Not really, although that definitely helped. But the biggest reason is that when people get in a group, their mentality goes very, very strange, and their defenses go out the window. They get so hungry for that kill because they think it's an easy kill because they've got an outnumbering advantage. 3-on-1, 4-on-1, 2-on-1. And they seem to forget that they are not invincible and they can die just as easily as everyone else. And they start smashing each other in the back of the head, all so they can get that one precious kill. Don't be a greedy clown. This mentality really occurred to me when capturing this piece of footage. I was trying to get an example of bad positioning, so this looked perfect. About 6 enemies all clumped up, I was just going to charge into the middle of them and get quickly killed as an example of bad positioning. But what happened? I was able to riposte and kill 1, hit, riposte, target switch, kill 2, riposte, target switch, hit. They're all hitting each other now. I'm able to get just 1 more riposte and 1 more kill. I'm able to kill 3 of them before I get taken down. And this was me trying to die easily. As I mentioned, when people get in a group, for some reason they think they're invincible and forget that they need to defend themselves. So, if you're on the other side of the outnumbered situation, as in you're the one doing the outnumbering, remember you still need to defend yourself against that one person, because if they're any good, they will still kick the crap out of a couple of you, if you forget to defend yourself. So, whichever side of the outnumbered situation you end up on, always be ready to defend, whether you're outnumbering or the one being outnumbered. Because remember, every time you kill somebody, you get granted a little bit of health. If you're outnumbered, you got a lot of people to kill, so that's a lot of health to potentially gain, which is how I killed 7 or 8 people just now. I didn't really do anything exceptional, I just took advantage of my enemy's mistakes, and the greedy clowns helped me out by all damaging each other, which with a war axe usually translates to 1-hit kills for me. And of course, there was definitely a bit of luck involved. So, try to get yourself into the habit of defending and riposting when in outnumbered situations, and if you're the one doing the outnumbering, remember to defend yourself because you are not invincible, and try not to bonk your teammates around the head too much either. Which brings us to the next rule. Rule number 3. Be a team player.
Would you mind stepping aside?
So the first aspect of being a team player is a pretty obvious one I'm sure we all know all about, and that is friendly damage, or worse yet, friendly kills. We're all going to make mistakes from time to time, and that's okay, but it's about keeping them to a minimum. Swinging your weapon horizontally when there's teammates around is usually the biggest cause of team damage. So as I mentioned earlier, stick to stabs and overhead attacks primarily. There's much lower chance of hitting your teammates, meaning they're less likely to die from the damage that you caused, especially if you're not using the friendly damage perk. So a little example of how often this can happen. Now I'm going to swing my weapon here, but I didn't know there was an ally behind me, so this is kind of not my fault, but still the swing has caused the team damage. And then this enemy is going to commit the same thing on the right here with the axe. He's just about to clonk his ally in the back of the head because he's swinging his axe. And then I am going to be a fool of a took and do exactly the same thing. I know better, so this shouldn't have happened. It's just human error in the heat of battle. This wouldn't have happened though if we were all paying more attention or using stabs and overhead attacks only. And that guy I was just fighting is seemingly dead now, and it's probably my fault. So do try to rein in your friendly damage because it is hurting your team a lot, especially if it's team deathmatch. And don't fall into the trap of being a greedy clown and so desperately going after a kill that you just start wiping out teammates just for that one kill. It's not going to be worth it. And the same goes for any other form of damage that you can do. Arrows, fire pots, horses, catapults being the worst one. People seem to think it's okay to fire a catapult into a crowd and kill a bunch of teammates. As long as they kill at least one enemy, they justify it as being okay. You should never fire a catapult into your friendlies ever. I mean, if you kill 2 teammates and 1 enemy, you're actually going to end up with -1 kills on your KD, so it's hurting yourself and it's hurting your team. Aim your catapults where enemies are going to be, not where friendlies are. It's ridiculous that I have to even say that, but how many times have you been killed by a friendly catapult? The next point of being a team player is to play the objective. Mostly in frontline of course, but also in team deathmatch. Here I am in frontline right at the start of a Tiger game, and I'm the only person in the central point, which is the most important one and is where everyone should be heading. Only one person needs to take the first point. So I'm taking this middle point all by myself, but the Iron Company are a-coming and they are a-swarming. But still, I am forever alone. I honestly have no idea what people are getting up to. You'd think people would run towards the middle point when they see one other person trying to capture the first point, because they are not needed at that first objective. Also, people don't seem to ever defend any points. They take a point and then they just try to push the next one, forgetting that they need to actually defend the original point that they've just worked to take. I think the problem is that most people play frontline like it's team deathmatch. They're just running around looking for kills, not really fussed about the game, in which case you should go and play team deathmatch, which comes with its own objectives. Yes, of course, you are supposed to kill the enemy, that is part of the objective, but did you realize you're also supposed to not die? The more you die, the more points you give to the enemy team, so staying alive is very important. Now of course, not everyone is going to be great at the game, especially if you're new, and that's fine. Every team will have its better and worse players. But if you're making silly mistakes like running into crowds of enemies by yourself, or not listening out for horses, or standing in the way of ballista, or falling off things, and of course committing team damage is one of the worst offenses because you may cause other people to die, which is just as bad as dying yourself because it gives the enemy team a point, or 10 points in Mordhau's case. So even if you struggle to get kills because you haven't got the hang of the combat yet, at least try not to die. If you're on the scoreboard with 3 kills and 15 deaths, you're giving the enemy lots of points and not helping your team at all. Do you want to be that guy? I didn't think so. So just do your best, use your brain and play that objective. It's also important to keep an eye out for teammates in trouble, especially if they're your friends. Here I see my main man Soul in trouble as the greedy clowns are back again. And although I know he's about to put them all in the bin by himself, I can't let him have all that fun, so I'm going to go and take some of the workload off him. So it's definitely good to have friends out there, whether you know them or not. I've saved Soul's ass from death just as many times as he's saved mine. Because hey man, Mordhau bros. And even if you don't have a Mordhau bro to watch your back, it's still pretty gratifying to charge in and save an ally's life, rather than putting a trap down that they run into. Be sure to try and work together with your allies or friends, because it can help improve everybody's KD.
You should be rewarded for your efforts.
So remember, if you're playing a team-based game mode, be a team player. Try not to smash your friendlies in the face too much. A little bit is going to happen, but as I say, minimizing it is the key. Especially as it's losing you points in the game, which is going to mean less money and experience at the end. Now on this War Axe character, which is my main character, I don't have the friendly fire perk in a lot of this footage, but I do use it now pretty much all the time, and I definitely find it helps with not dying from team damage and also commits less team damage overall. So I can recommend that if you've got a point to spare. And then there's remembering to play the objective, especially in frontline, because it is not just team deathmatch, and trying to solo push a cart to the end of the map is not really fun by yourself. Where the hell the rest of my team are in this footage, I do not know. And lastly, keep an eye out for your allies and especially your friends, because sometimes they might just need a little hand. Personally, I try not to be a selfish player. I could just ignore all my allies, I could just not play the objective, I could just team damage the crap out of everyone, but the game would be less enjoyable not only for me, but for everyone else as well. No I in team and all that.
Well met!
Rule number 4. Learn your opponents.
Of that.
So in Mordhau, there's many different kinds of enemies that we can face. They'll have different weapons, different armor, different playstyles, and of course, different skill levels. And when you come into contact with anybody, you never know what you're going to get until you face them a couple of times, which gives you the chance to see what their game plan is. Some people that you come across, you might be able to beat easily. Others will be your kryptonite and you seemingly won't be able to ever beat them. But you can. You just need to figure them out a little bit. Now this isn't always easy, as the better players are more unpredictable of course, and if you're new, you are going to struggle against all the experienced players, but there's no reason you can't catch up. The more you play and the more opponents you face, the more you're going to learn. And some people fall into certain categories. There are the serial draggers who drag pretty much all of their attacks, meaning you're going to be parrying too soon a lot, but you'll learn the more you face these that being a bit more aggressive can help deal with them. There's the dreaded shield user, who may seem invincible to newer players, but they're nothing a few kicks can't handle. A combo I find works is to land a hit, combo into a feint, and then kick straight away, which will give you that shield stun and time to land an attack. And then there's everybody's favourite, the rapier and short spear stab spammers, who can be quite easily chambered and also disrupted well with kicks, but these are the kinds of things that you'll learn the more you play the game and the more you face different opponents. And as I say, if people are giving you trouble, eventually you should be able to figure them out. Like this guy in a duel server, we fought a couple of times and he's figured out that I like to feint. So he's being a bit more aggressive than he was before and he's stopping all of my feints. And because I'm being fairly predictable because I'm feinting all the time, he's able to figure me out and pop me in the trash can. So of course I needed to be more unpredictable because he'd figured me out then, he knew what to expect of me. Which is why better players can be harder to deal with because you never know what to expect. This then puts you on the defensive, makes you panic parry, and down you go. You could be super cheeky in a duel and pull out a crossbow, like this guy, which is a little bit cheap, but hey, it worked. So next time I face this guy, I'm going to be ready for that fucking crossbow again. And lo and behold, there it is. So I learned from the previous time I fought him that he likes to whip out a crossbow when he thinks he's got you nearly dead. I learned from my mistake, and that's really what it's all about. Now, coming back to weapons, as I mentioned earlier about finding one weapon you like and sticking with it, it's equally as important to learn all the weapons you're not using. Learn how to deal with those different weapons. If you're fighting a Zweihander, for example, like here, you have to be aware of that deceptive range. It would often catch me out when I first started playing Mordhau, when I thought I was out of range of it but I wasn't, and, well, that happened. But then if you're fighting someone with a maul, it's a different situation. You no longer have to worry about the range, but you may have to worry about dragging, as that is something more players like to do a lot. And hey, it may catch you out 1 or 2 times and they'll get you, but if you remember that they're going to do that, you can try to figure out how to deal with it, which would just be parrying a bit later. So take note of the weapons you're using, take note of the weapons that are causing you trouble, and try to learn how to deal with them and those opponents. Honestly, one of the best ways to get better at Mordhau is duel servers. Just go in and fight people. You may get your head kicked in a lot at first, but you'll learn a lot in the process, because you'll learn your opponents. So start to take note of all the different kind of players out there. You'll learn how to deal with them, you'll find some of them harder to deal with, some of them easier, but most people can be put into a category, and once you learn how to deal with that category, those people don't become a problem. Like shield users, for example, or spab stammers. That's right, spab stammers, or stab spammers if you prefer. But yeah, try to figure people out, and if you keep dying to the same person, try to figure out what it is they're doing that's catching you out and what you can do about it. And if you are someone who enjoys Mordhau and wants to get better, you can join my Discord, as we do have a fair few boys who play it, and I'd like to grow that side of my community. There is a link in the description, and we do sometimes pay for private servers for us all to play on. So if you're interested, head over to the Discord. Rule number 5. Stay aware to stay alive.
Impossible.
So Mordhau is a world filled with threats all around you all of the time. You're going to need good understanding of your position and situation as much of the time as is humanly possible. This quite simply means being aware of all the things that may threaten your life and keeping yourself out of the way of them when necessary. Despite what some people might say, everybody likes to improve their KD, and awareness is a big part of that. It's knowing when to advance and when to fall back, something this dingaling has no concept of apparently, because he's charged into a crowd of 6 enemies and has swiftly died. So it's the awareness to take note of how many allies are around you compared to how many enemies are around you. Is it a good idea to charge in, or should you wait back for a second for some more allies to help you out? In every situation you get involved in Mordhau, there's a percentage chance you'll die. If you go into a certain situation by yourself or compared to having 2 or 3 allies with you, that percentage may be very different. It's also the awareness to know when you're not needed in certain situations. If 3 guys are ganging up to beat the crap out of 1 guy, well, you probably don't need to join in. There may be other allies that need help instead, or just other people for you to kill. 4 guys do not need to attack 1 guy. It's just team damage and riposte damage from the enemy waiting to happen. And then there's the awareness to see when someone is causing your team a problem. If there's an archer up on a building just raining down fire on your allies, maybe you should go up and do something about them because they are hurting your team. This also comes back to being a team player. And the same thing with horses. They can plague the battlefield and cause your team a lot of trouble, so why don't you be the one to get up and go and do something about it, even if you have to change character and go get your billhook out. Same with catapults or ballista, and of course those dirty little trolls that like to make little gun nests. Nothing quite as satisfying as chopping them down. Make sure you use your ears. Horses are very audible, allowing you to get the block in just in time, which may save your life. Just try not to spend too much time laughing about it with your teammates in case you miss them coming back around. Also, did you know that if you time it just right, you can actually break a catapult boulder with a well-timed hit? Only joking, do not try that. Doesn't work. But do keep your eyes on the sky because catapult boulders are often very easy to avoid, especially if you see one landing around you, you can rest assured there's probably going to be another one on the way. So keep an eye out for the horses, the catapult boulders, the archers, the fire pot fellas, and be the one to go and sort them out. Another simple but very important thing to be aware of that a lot of people seem to neglect is that it's okay to take a break once in a while. If you become injured through the trials of war, which will inevitably happen, you should sometimes fall back and just regen your health rather than fighting on injured, because you're more likely to die, of course. Again, that percentage chance of survival coming into play. So do be aware of your health, and don't be afraid to fall back from the action just to take 5 or 10 seconds to regen your health, because it could be the difference between you being one-shotted or not. It's also important to be aware of environmental advantages and disadvantages. Like here in Crossroads, the enemy has the main point and they've put spikes on our main way across, so it's very difficult to go that way. But most of my team not engaging their brains, and this happens a lot, just seem to be trundling into that way regardless. They don't try to go round, they don't try to flank, they don't try to use the stairs, they just all go up the same very difficult way. And I'll leave it up to your imagination on what happens to them. So have the situational awareness to see when something is a bad idea. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. Don't just mindlessly follow the herd into your doom. Getting to know the maps a bit as well can definitely help and give you those flanking opportunities, which can go a long way. So stay aware of your situation and position yourself well. Realize that running into a crowd of 5 enemies is probably a bad idea. Watch out for horses, catapults, archers, fire pots, all the bastards that may put you in the ground. And open your eyes to everything that's going on around you, especially environmentally. Don't just run around in the red mist all the time, trying to play team deathmatch, unless it is team deathmatch, and try to use some initiative to get the job done. So there you go. The 5 rules of Mordhau, which I personally live by, which serve me pretty damn well if I do say so myself. As I mentioned, Mordhau is a game with a pretty steep learning curve and a lot to get used to when coming into combat. It's not just a mindless medieval slasher that many seem to take it for, as using some intelligence and tactics definitely pays off. It's going to take some patience and a lot of failure, but eventually you will get better. I was pretty terrible at chivalry for a long time, but the more you play, the more you learn, like any game really. It's mostly about building good habits and learning to use them without thinking about it, and also being pretty aggressive, as Mordhau is a game that rewards aggression. If you go into combat hesitant and timidly, you'll likely find yourself being manipulated, picked apart, and then thoroughly destroyed. So, try to apply the 5 rules of Mordhau to every Mordhau life, fearlessly and aggressively. I think there's a lot of people in Mordhau that struggle with the combat, so instead of trying to learn and get better, they'll run around with 6 throwing axes, 10 firebombs, a bunch of spikes and a mounted crossbow, and try to cheese their way to some empty kills. If these people actually used their heads and tried to figure out where they're going wrong and why, they could probably be a competent player just as anybody else. So if you really do enjoy Mordhau and do really want to get better, perseverance is the key. No matter how hard you suck now, you can definitely get better. So, I hope you've enjoyed this. I thank you for watching. As I mentioned, I do have a Discord where you can find a Mordhau room, so if you're looking for a Mordhau bro, maybe you can find one. And now, while this video has been a big one for Mordhau, I am going to be doing some smaller videos for Mordhau on more specific topics, so keep your eyes peeled for those. So, meeting adjourned. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. I'll leave you with this footage, and I'll see you in the future.